They stole my prototype, threw me out into the cold, and left me with nothing. They didn't know my girlfriend was carrying a billionaire's heir. Now, they've lost everything and are begging at my door. My father used to say you could tell everything about a man by the shine on his shoes. He'd say it while looking down at my own steel-toed boots, perpetually scuffed and dusted with sawdust, and a sigh would escape his lips. It wasn't a sigh of anger, but of disappointment, the kind a collector might make upon finding a scratch on a prized antique. To him, my hands, with their calloused palms and grease-stained knuckles, weren't the tools of a creator. They were the evidence of a failed investment. He never understood that for me, building something real was the only thing that felt like success. That success lived and breathed in the family garage. It wasn't the clean, two-car space attached to the house where my mother's pristine SUV sat. It was the detached workshop out back, a place that smelled of old wood, hot solder, and motor oil. It had been my grandfather's sanctuary, and now it was mine. He was the one who'd put a hammer in my hand when I was 10. Never let anyone tell you that creating with your hands makes you less of a man, he'd said, his voice a low, kind rumble. It makes you a creator just like God. He was a man who measured worth by the integrity of your work, not the polish on your shoes. After he passed, the garage became my inheritance, a legacy of spirit, if not of paper. Inside those walls, my life's work was taking shape. For 3 years, I had poured every spare dollar and every waking hour into it. It was a home automation system I called Nexus. It wasn't just another smart home gimmick. It was intuitive, a true artificial intelligence that learned a family's rhythms and anticipated their needs, all controlled from a simple, elegant interface. It was groundbreaking, and it was almost finished. My family saw it differently. To my father, Nexus was a lottery ticket, a potential headline that read, "Local Patriarch's Vision Leads to Tech Revolution." He'd walk into the workshop, stare at the complex web of circuit boards and wires, and see only dollar signs and bragging rights at the country club. My mother, on the other hand, saw only a mess. Her world was one of appearances of garden parties and charity luncheons. My workshop was a blemish on the perfectly manicured landscape of her life. "Honestly, Alex," she'd say, peering in from the doorway as if afraid to be contaminated, "when are you going to get a real job? What will the neighbors think?" And there were my siblings. My brother, Mark, was the golden boy. He had a business degree from a respectable university and a corner office at a marketing firm our father had pulled strings to get him. He wore tailored suits and had a handshake that was firm and utterly meaningless. He saw my project as a threat. He knew, deep down, that it was a work of genius, and my genuine talent only highlighted his own hollowness. He'd saunter into the garage, clap me on the back, and say things like, "Still tinkering, little brother? Let me know when you make something that can actually buy you a new truck." My sister, Clara, was the social puppeteer of the family. She was beautiful, charming, and utterly ruthless. To her, I was an inconvenient footnote in the family story she was writing for public consumption. She'd watch me work with a kind of detached pity, the way one might watch a stray dog. "It's so quaint that you still like to get your hands dirty, Alex," she once remarked at a family barbecue, loud enough for her friends to hear. "It's like our own little working-class hero." They were a united front of polished condescension. I was the foundation of the house, unseen, taken for granted, but essential. I was the one who'd re-shingled the roof, fixed the plumbing, and kept my father's vintage car running, all while they lived their glossy lives. I did it out of a misguided sense of duty, a desperate, foolish hope that one day they would see me. Not the mechanic, not the handyman, but me, Alex. The only person who did see me was Isabella. We met at a small electronic supply store. She was looking for a specific resistor for a vintage radio she was restoring, and I was the only other person in the aisle who knew what she was talking about. She had a curiosity that was as bright and clear as her eyes. She didn't just tolerate my passion for Nexus. She shared it. She'd spend hours in the garage, sitting on an overturned bucket, asking sharp, insightful questions. She'd hand me tools, her fingers brushing mine, sending a spark through me that had nothing to do with electricity. I knew she came from a comfortable family. She dressed simply, but her clothes were well made. She spoke with an easy confidence that suggested she'd never had to worry about a bill in her life. But she never talked about money, and I never asked. I was falling in love with the woman who saw the man, not the grease under his fingernails. She was my secret hope, the one part of my life that felt wholly and truly mine. In early November, I had the breakthrough. After weeks of debugging, the final piece of code slotted into place. I spoke a command into the microphone. Nexus, initiate welcome home sequence. The workshop, which had been dark and silent, came to life. The overhead lights slowly brightened to a warm, soft glow. The ventilation fans kicked on, clearing the air. On the main monitor, a simple message appeared. Welcome home, Alex. I've been waiting. It was perfect. Tears pricked my eyes. Isabella, who had been holding her breath beside me, let out a joyful laugh and threw her arms around my neck. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. In that moment, a plan formed in my mind, a final, hopeful gamble. Thanksgiving was in 2 weeks. The whole family would be there. I would present Nexus to them. I wouldn't ask for much, just a small loan to get the business off the ground, to file the patents properly. But it was more than that. This was my chance to finally get the one thing I had craved my entire life, my father's approval. To see him look at me, not with disappointment, but with pride. Isabella saw the look on my face. A shadow of concern crossed her features. Are you sure, Alex? About showing them? I have to, I said, my voice thick with emotion. This time, it'll be different. They have to see. They just have to. She squeezed my hand, her silence a form of cautious support. But in the back of my mind, a small, cold voice whispered a warning. It was the ghost of my grandfather, reminding me that you can't expect a harvest from barren soil. I told that voice to be quiet. This time, I was sure it would be different. This time, I would finally be seen. The air in my parents' house on Thanksgiving was thick with the scent of roasting turkey and forced cheer. My mother's fine china gleamed on the dining room table, reflecting the cold November light from the windows. My father was holding court in the living room, a glass of expensive scotch in his hand, laughing a little too loudly at one of Mark's canned jokes. Clara was flitting between guests, a perfect hostess, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. I felt like a stranger in a foreign land, my stomach churning with a mixture of nerves and hope. After dinner, as the dessert plates were being cleared, my father clinked his glass for attention. Folks, he announced, a magnanimous smile spreading across his face. My son, Alex, has been working on a little project in his workshop. He believes it's something special. Alex, the floor is yours. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. I took a deep breath and began. I had brought the main Nexus hub and a monitor, setting them up on a side table. I didn't just talk about code and circuits. I spoke about a vision. A home that wasn't just smart but intuitive. A technology that served people, not the other way around. Then I initiated the demo. I showed them how Nexus could learn schedules, create custom lighting and temperature profiles, manage security, and even reorder groceries, all with simple, conversational commands. A hush fell over the room. I saw a flicker of genuine awe in the eyes of my aunt and uncle. For a fleeting second, I thought I had done it. I glanced at my father, and in his eyes, I saw something I mistook for pride. It wasn't. It was the cold, hard glint of calculation. He stood up, his face a mask of paternal gravity. Thank you, Alex. That was impressive. He paused, letting the word hang in the air. So impressive, in fact, that we've been talking. He gestured to my mother, Mark, and Clara, who all wore identical, somber expressions. They had rehearsed this. This is too big for you, son, my father said, his voice dripping with false concern. An idea like this needs resources, proper management. It needs to be handled by the family. By Mark. Consider this your contribution. We're protecting you from failure. The air was sucked out of my lungs. It felt like the floor had dropped away beneath me. What are you talking about? I stammered. This is my work. I built this. Mark stepped forward, placing a proprietary hand on the Nexus hub. We know you did, little brother, and we're all so proud. But let's be realistic. You're a tinkerer. I'm a businessman. We'll make sure you get a small percentage, of course, for your initial efforts. Clara added the final, venomous touch. Honestly, Alex, you should be thanking us. We're saving you from embarrassing yourself. I looked from face to face, searching for a single ally, a shred of decency. I saw nothing. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. My father's face was set like stone. This wasn't a negotiation. It was an annexation. No, I said, my voice shaking but firm. You can't do this. This is everything I have. I moved to grab my prototype, my laptop. My father blocked my path. Don't be difficult, Alex. We're family. We're doing what's best for the family name. This isn't a family, I choked out. This is a hijacking. That was when the hammer fell. My father's face hardened, the false concern vanishing, replaced by cold fury. You ungrateful brat, he hissed, his voice low so the other relatives couldn't quite hear. After everything we've given you. He turned to my brother. Mark, secure the equipment. It's company property now. I stood there, paralyzed, as my brother and a cousin he'd roped and began unplugging my life's work. I tried to protest, but my father grabbed my arm. You have two options, he said, his grip like iron. You can accept our generous offer and stay in line, or you can get out. Now, then I'll get out, I said, the words tasting like ash. I expected an argument, a negotiation. I got a nod. Fine, my father said, releasing my arm. He walked to the hallway table, picked up my single car key, and dropped it into his pocket. This car is registered to the house, and your phone is on the family plan. He gestured to my mother, who silently walked over to me and held out her hand. Numbly, I placed my phone in her palm. She didn't say a word. I was being erased, systematically, efficiently, and with chilling precision. You have 5 minutes to leave the property, my father said, his voice flat and final. He turned his back on me and returned to the remaining guests as if nothing had happened, leaving me standing alone in the entryway. I stumbled toward the door, my mind a screaming void. I passed my mother, who was staring intently at a spot on the wallpaper. I passed Clara, who was already laughing at something Mark said. None of them looked at me. I was a ghost in my own home. I pushed the heavy oak door open and stepped out into the brutal November night. The wind cut through my thin sweater like a knife. Behind me, the door clicked shut, the sound of the deadbolt sliding into place echoing the final closing of a chapter in my life. I had walked into that house a hopeful son. I left a dispossessed man, with nothing but the clothes on my back and a heart shattered into a million pieces. I don't know how long I walked. The manicured streets of the suburb gave way to the harsher lights of the main road. My feet were numb, my mind replaying the scene over and over. Every hopeful word I'd spoken, every proud smile, now felt like a sick joke. I had been so naive, so utterly, profoundly stupid. My shame was a physical weight pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. The shame of a man who had been so easily broken and discarded. The shame of a man who couldn't protect the one thing he had ever created. Eventually, I found myself standing outside Isabella's apartment building. I had nowhere else to go. I buzzed her apartment, my hand trembling. When she answered, her cheerful, "Be right down," twisted the knife in my gut. When she saw my face under the harsh fluorescent light of the lobby, her smile vanished. "Alex, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," I mumbled. "I saw my family." Up in her apartment, as she wrapped a blanket around my shaking shoulders and pressed a hot mug of tea into my hands, the story came pouring out. I told her everything. The presentation, the betrayal, the cold, clinical way they had cut me out of my own life. When I was done, a heavy silence filled the small, warm room. I couldn't look at her, too consumed by my own humiliation. She was quiet for a long time. Then she stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "They won't get away with this," she said, her voice quiet but vibrating with a steel I had never heard before. "It's over, Izzy," I said, my voice hollow. "They have everything. The prototype, the research. I have nothing. You have me," she said, turning to face me. "And you have your mind, which is something they could never steal." She took a deep breath. "Alex, there's something I should have told you a long time ago. I kept it secret because I wanted to be sure you loved me for me, and not for anything else." She told me then, told me about her family. Her last name wasn't just comfortable. It was Sterling, as in Sterling Tech, one of the biggest, most innovative tech conglomerates in the world. Her father, who had passed away 2 years prior, had been a legend. And she wasn't just an heiress. She was the sole heir. My mind struggled to process it. It was too much, too surreal. It felt like another layer of reality I couldn't grasp. My father left me more than just money. Alex, she continued, her eyes locked on mine. He left me the best patent lawyers in the country. He left me a network of engineers and innovators. He left me the resources to fight. I stared at her, overwhelmed. A part of me, the part that had just been crushed, felt a surge of hope. But another, deeper part, the core of my identity as a self-made man, recoiled. I can't, Izzy, I whispered. I can't be the man who was saved by his girlfriend's money. This was supposed to be mine. She crossed the room and knelt in front of me, taking my hands in hers. Her grip was firm. It is yours, she said fiercely. Listen to me. I'm not saving you. I'm investing in you. I'm investing in the brilliant, honorable, stubborn man I fell in love with. This isn't a handout. It's a partnership. We are a team. Now, let's go build your empire. Her words were a lifeline. But just as I was starting to grasp it, she paused. A strange, thoughtful look crossed her face. She put a hand on her stomach. That's weird, she murmured. With all this, I didn't even realize. Realize what? I asked. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a dawning, shocking realization. I'm late, she said. I'm 2 weeks late. We stared at each other as the new reality crashed down on us, a tidal wave on top of the earthquake. An hour later, 2 faint blue lines on a plastic stick confirmed it. In the sterile quiet of Isabella's bathroom, on the worst night of my life, I learned that I had lost one family, but was about to start my own. The fight was no longer just for me. It was for the future of my child. A child who would carry the Sterling name, an heir to a legacy my family, in their blind greed, could never have possibly imagined. 2 years felt like a lifetime. The memory of that Thanksgiving night hadn't faded. It had been forged into a cold, hard resolve that fueled me through 18-hour days and sleepless nights. The man who had stumbled out into the cold was gone. In his place was a founder, a father-to-be, and a man with a singular, unyielding purpose. Isabella was true to her word. This was a partnership. With a fraction of her resources, we established Apex Innovations. We didn't operate out of a flashy high-rise. We leased a modest, secure facility in an industrial park, a place of function over form. It was clean, efficient, and filled with the quiet hum of progress. Our team was small, a handful of the brightest young engineers who were more interested in building the future than in corporate politics. They were loyal not to a paycheck, but to the vision. My vision. We didn't just rebuild Nexus, we reinvented it. Freed from the constraints of my garage workshop, I was able to innovate in ways I'd only dreamed of. We made it faster, more secure, more intuitive. We filed a fortress of patents, each one a brick in the wall we were building around my creation. I worked with a relentless intensity, driven by 2 images, the face of my unborn child on the ultrasound screen, and the smug, triumphant faces of my family. Meanwhile, Legacy Home Systems launched to a storm of media fanfare. My brother, Mark, was on the cover of tech magazines, hailed as a visionary. My father was quoted in articles talking about cultivating a culture of innovation within the family. They had used my stolen, inferior prototype and my parents' life savings to build a house of cards. From the articles I read, I could tell they were running into problems. Their system was buggy, prone to crashing. But their marketing was brilliant. They were selling a story, and the world was buying it. I ignored them. Our strategy was different. We operated in stealth mode, perfecting our product, waiting for the right moment. The name Apex wasn't an accident. We were aiming for the summit. The right moment presented itself in the form of the Consumer Technology Expo in Las Vegas, the largest tech showcase in the world. Legacy Home Systems had a massive, ostentatious pavilion right at the center of the main hall, a monument to stolen glory. We, Apex Innovations, had a small, 10 by 10 booth in a far corner, listed in the program guide under dozens of other startups. It was exactly what I wanted. A week before the expo, Isabella's legal team, who had been quietly gathering evidence for 2 years, made a breakthrough. My grandfather had a safe deposit box that had gone unnoticed. Inside, among old war medals and stock certificates, was a thick envelope with my name on it. We opened it in the sterile environment of a lawyer's office. Inside was the original deed to the garage workshop, legally signed over to me on my 21st birthday. And beneath it, a letter written in my grandfather's familiar, steady hand. Tears streamed down my face as I read it. It was a validation from beyond the grave. He wrote of his fears about my father's greed and Mark's envy. He ended with a line that became my mantra: "Your father measures a man by the shine on his shoes. I measure a man by the integrity of his work. This workshop is yours because you have integrity, Alex. Don't ever let them take that from you." This wasn't just evidence anymore. It was my armor. The first day of the expo was a blur of noise and light. Our small booth attracted a trickle of curious engineers and industry insiders. They were impressed by our live demo, by the seamless stability of Apex. They would nod, take a business card, and move on. All the while, the circus was in full swing over at the Legacy Pavilion. Mark was giving interviews, his teeth gleaming under the spotlights. On the second day, it happened. Mark, flanked by a gaggle of journalists and influencers, decided to take a victory lap. He saw our small booth and a cruel, arrogant smile spread across his face. He saw it as an opportunity to publicly crush the competition. He led his entourage toward us like a wolf pack. Well, he said, his voice booming. "Look what we have here. Alex, still tinkering with your little toys, brother?" The reporters chuckled. I remained calm. Isabella stood just behind me, a silent, steadying presence. "Hello, Mark," I said, my voice even. "It's not a toy. It's the future. Would you and your friends like a demonstration?" He laughed. "We've got our own future, thanks. The one that's actually successful." "I'm sure," I said, "but I have a proposition. A live, side-by-side comparison. My system against yours. Same commands, same tasks. Let's see which future is more reliable." The journalist's eyes lit up. This was drama. This was a story. Trapped by his own arrogance, Mark couldn't back down. "Fine," he sneered. "Prepare to be embarrassed." We set up 2 large monitors, one for Apex, one for Legacy. The crowd swelled, phones held high, recording. I started with simple commands. Lights on, temperature adjusted, music played. Both systems handled it. Then I escalated. "Nexus," I said to my system, "run a full home security diagnostic, cross-reference thermal imaging for anomalies, and simultaneously stream 4K video to all connected devices. Then tell me if the back door is locked." The Apex screen instantly displayed a complex diagnostic, a thermal map, and a crystal-clear video feed. A calm, female voice emanated from the speakers. "Diagnostic complete. No anomalies detected. Streaming initiated. The back door is locked." The crowd murmured, impressed. I turned to Mark. "Your turn." Mark, looking a little less confident, repeated the command to his system. The Legacy screen flickered. The video feed stuttered. The system struggled to process the command. Then, a blue screen appeared. The infamous blue screen of death. The system had crashed. Completely. A wave of laughter rippled through the crowd. Mark's face went from pale to crimson. He furiously tried to reboot the system, but it was dead. "It seems your future has a few bugs," I said calmly. But the final blow didn't come from me. A man pushed his way through the crowd. He looked exhausted and angry. I vaguely recognized him from photos as Mark's lead engineer. "He's right," the man said, his voice loud and clear. A reporter shoved a microphone in his face. "My name is David Chun, and I was the lead engineer at Legacy until I was fired last week. I was fired because I told him the system wasn't ready. It's unstable because it's built on a stolen, reverse-engineered foundation that we never fully understood." The crowd gasped. The reporters swarmed him. "Whose foundation?" one of them yelled. David Chun pointed a trembling finger directly at me. He said. "I can attest, under oath, that the initial schematics Mark gave us were authored by Alex. We spent months trying to patch a system we didn't build. I refuse to put my name on a stolen, unsafe product. This man, Alex, is the real innovator. It was a nuclear bomb. The flashbulbs were blinding. Mark stood frozen, his face a mask of horror and disbelief. His house of cards hadn't just collapsed. It had been incinerated in a public spectacle. As security escorted him away from a growing mob of angry journalists, my eyes met his for a brief moment. In them, I saw no remorse. Only the raw, pathetic terror of a fraud who had finally been exposed. I felt nothing. No triumph, no pity. Just the quiet, clean finality of a chapter ending. The fallout from the expo was swift and brutal. The video of the disastrous demo and David Chen's testimony went viral. Legacy Gate, the blogs called it. Our story was everywhere. The tale of the stolen invention, the triumphant underdog, and the public downfall of a corporate charlatan. Apex Innovations was flooded with calls from investors, distributors, and journalists. We had to hire a PR firm just to manage the influx. Armed with the grandfather's letter, David Chen's sworn affidavit, and a mountain of public evidence, Isabella's lawyers filed the lawsuit. It was less of a legal battle and more of a surgical strike. The court slapped an immediate and permanent injunction on Legacy Home Systems, freezing their assets and barring them from selling any products.